afternoon. Today is the 30th of June, it's right at the end of the month, and for some reason the weather has completely changed from yesterday. So it doesn't quite look like the summer, but it's time for yet another not particularly interesting, very vague and probably quite boring vlog. Something that I saw on the Auto Express website quite recently is some very, very unusual news that Volvo, after deciding that they weren't going to sell saloons and estates to private customers in this country anymore last year, they've decided they want to reintroduce them. Now, there's only two models available. There is a V60 and a V90. Some of you who watch this video probably already own some of those models. I know in the Volvo Owners Club that I'm part of, there's a fair few of those around the current generation of the two. I don't suppose there'll be a massively extensive range of powertrains and trims, because, well, there was a reason why they discontinued them in the first place, presumably they weren't selling so well. But the traditional customer for Volvo, and I know having owned three of them in a short space of time, it really is a lot of the time about the saloons and the estates, particularly the estates. Obviously they have made other types of car, you know, there's beautiful things like the Mark 1 C70 and the 780, the coupes, and you know, they made a convertible many years ago for a time that wasn't the C70, but it's really generally Volvo about the saloons and the estates. It has been for so long. The first SUV that they made, but wasn't like a military specification one, was the XC90 in 2002. Now that's a very, very successful car for them, and you know, the first generation ones are very nice. Actually, the second generation ones are nice as well, but it's sort of moved, and you know, they've got the CLIII X30, which is like an SUV. It's a fully electric car, and the XC40 I think is their biggest seller in this country. But you go to the Owners Club, and how many of the people there actually have anything other than estate? It's not that many. There are some people who've got you know, XC40s, XC90s. There are some people who've got XC60s, but generally you see a lot of people that got estates. I'm actually relatively rare that, you know, I own a Volvo saloon in part of the club, and this is my second saloon. I'm quite into them. Mr. Coleman, Rubbish Mechanic, who is far more of a Volvo expert than I am, he's owned Volvos for a long time, you know, in all sorts of contexts, and he's currently got two 90s Volvos. He's got a 940 and a V90, which is the first generation V90. The first generation one is basically a very lightly modified facelifted 960. It was sold, as far as I remember, for less than 2 years, but it's a great car. You probably would have seen it on the channel actually by the time that most of you see this. So yeah, this is just what Volvo is known for. If you are a fleet customer, Volvo would have sold you an estate anyway. They would have very happily done that. It's just the private customers who weren't able to order for about a year. I don't quite know why this has happened. It's perhaps a lot of backlash from people within the club and things like that, or just generally people going to the dealership and saying, well, I really want a new V90 or a V60, and I can just go and buy one from another manufacturer. There aren't actually that many in that way anyway, but BMW will still sell you one, Audi will still sell you one, Mercedes will still sell you one, so probably it's to do with that. But you know, the competition is still there. I also like estate cars, and you know, I've maybe chosen in the future which one of those I would want to buy. I don't know anything quite yet, because you know, the Sanyong we've got, we've had it for years, and we will have it longer. We don't need to change that at the moment, but I do fancy getting an estate car to replace it. But our estate cars in general are sort of extinct and dying breed. Well, let's think about some of the models that I know that are on the market. You can still buy an Astra estate, you can still buy an i30 estate, you can still buy a Focus estate, you can still buy a Kia Ceed, which is called a Sportswagen, or the Proceed, which is another type of like shooting brake estate, what they probably call it, which is silly because it's a little bit on the ridiculous side. But there are not as many estates as there used to be. You know, people have sort of replaced them with SUVs. I mean, Volvo themselves have done it, and it's probably with Ford's going themselves. I don't know how much longer that Focus Estate is going to be on sale, for example. It's very much this idea that actually kind of, a lot of these more what are now niche products, which is bizarre, isn't it, when you think like, many years ago Estates were just the default sort of family car, and Cortinas and Granadas and Carltons and Vectras and things like that, even the Amigas, they were always sort of there, and the ultimate thing that would do virtually anything for you, if you bought a fast estate. I mean, an example of that would have been the something like an 850 T5. The T5s are bonkers things, and the police used to use them and love them. And in the club, we still absolutely very proud of the fact that Volvo did go down that route, and they sort of decided that they weren't just going to be sensible all the time. They were going to make a car that drove really well and was fast and actually was able to be used by the police and other people who liked comfort, space and dependability, and also wanted to go fast. The police still very much use, I think, mainly the V90s today. So, at some point in my life I might own one of these. They are very, very expensive. Modern Volvos are not affordable for many people until they get a few years down the line and they depreciate. And afterwards, they do make very good second-hand cars. It's amazing, actually. If you think about the P2 V70, that quite a few of the club members own, and the mileages that they've done, which is absolutely bonkers, like 300,000-400,000 miles. The 240s and 740s were sort of the same. They would just go on for years and years. You looked after them. Mr. Coleman's V90, that's done over 200,000 miles, and it's sort of barely run in, really. It's crazy. So Volvo had this market of just years and years and years, a typical customer who would just come and buy another Volvo, come and buy another Volvo, come and buy another one. And certainly within the club, there's a lot of people who are like that. I'm not so particularly sort of well into one particular brand. I've had all kinds of brands of car over the course of a long time. One of the reasons I actually came to Volvo in the first place was the nostalgic reason. My mother had a Volvo estate for so many years. I mean, it was 1990 to 2001 she had a 240, and it wasn't actually the most reliable car. There were quite a few problems with it. One of these days I might make another video and detail all the problems she had with it, because it's quite a good record of that, because she actually complained to Volvo about some problems she was having with the car, which Mr. Coleman finds most amusing, because they're very common problems about a specific type of 240, and a lot of them didn't have those problems, just the ones she had. But generally they're just known for being very, 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 very well loved and kind of long-lived cars. They're not faultless or anything. Nothing's faultless, but certainly the older ones tend to be. And I don't know if the new ones are as dependable now as actually they were. The P3s are pretty good. After that, you get onto platforms that answer the Ford base, which is the current one, which is companies owned by Geely these days. And there's a whole Polestar thing going on at the moment, which I'm not going to go into because that's just an unpleasant thing to talk about. But yes, it's just funny that like the traditional customer has been alienated by this decision, and so they sort of acquiesced and put them back on sale in this country. I'd like to try one of those actually. I don't know if I'll be able to. Volvo do sometimes turn up at the SMMT days that I attend, and they've got some to actually try, and that would be sort of one of the priorities, is to try one of those. Having tried a C40 fully electric thing a couple of years ago, which was all right, but it was £51,000 as tested, and I thought it was just a little bit too expensive for what it was. But I think Volvo and Polestar or whatever are tried to go through sort of certain image at a certain price. Whether you think it's worth it or not, I suppose it's really up to you. Anyway, I think that's quite enough about that. Thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment below, and we shall see you again for some more incredibly vague and not particularly interesting music.